So we're 25 years into democracy and racism keeps cropping up again and again. How is it affecting the youth of South Africa? Well, joining me in studio to talk more about this is Dr. Shakira Chunara, who is a member of the African Union Youth Advisory Council, and Kaya Ramushai from the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. Guys, thank you so much for coming in studio. Kaya, I want to start with you because you are 18 years of age. When you look at all the that sort of commentary, all the fights on Twitter, this person saying this about race, how does this make you feel at 18 years old?
What it says to me is that we're a very divided nation. We do not unite in what we want, and it raises a lot of questions like, is everything we are doing or everything that adults are doing, is it for the betterment of the country as a whole, most especially since we are the future?
Yeah, because you will inherit everything that we leave behind, and you see all these commentary going on, you know, and your groups, your social groups yourself, and even in school at 18, I assume you're still in school as well, yes. You know, is race such a big issue among your peers?
Well, I wouldn't say that it is. Reason being is that you rarely ever hear any other comment other than the whites own everything. That's the only comment you ever hear. So what that says to me is that we are not really analyzing this whole situation critically. So.
Okay. All right, Dr. Shakira, let me talk to you. You're part of the African Union Youth Advisory Council. Don't talk about Africa, but more about South Africa itself. And obviously, you're not exactly a born free, but you're on the cusp of the born frees. Firstly, what do you think of the phrase born free?
Well, I think there's a lot of meaning to it, right? I don't think that our democracy just fell from the sky, as Ahmed Kathrada would always say. So I think we're on that brink of immense struggle, but born into a society that still has racism, like we said, and it's all invisible. So racism hasn't gone away, you know. Even though we had democracy, doesn't mean it's the end of apartheid, really. But what it does mean is we have a whole lot of other, I think, a whole lot of other legislation, you know, freedom of speech, and so much more compared to the rest of the African continent. And that's the essence of being a born free.
Okay, now as a born free and looking at the race issue and also looking at the land issue, what is more important to you? Is it education? Is it jobs? Is it the issue of race and land?
I think racism and class are intertwined. We cannot get away from that. That's how race was created in South Africa for a workforce. It's how the economy boomed, having oppressed certain races, and it continues to be the case. Now,
if some of the constructs that defined what apartheid was still exist today, can you still call yourselves born free? And how much does that contribute to the race issue that we're seeing today? Kaya.
To be honest with you, I think what we are doing as a country is saying a whole lot of nothing. You look at, for instance, how often do you find that the youth is actually involved in decision making?
Yeah.
Never. And when it is being given an opportunity, how often do you find, or how much of the youth is being involved or is being active? It's a very few amount of them. So I think what the situation is, or I don't know how to express this, but yeah, I would say that politicians are just playing a game with us. I don't know if...
You don't feel involved, you feel ostracized from the process at the present moment.
They're saying you're involved, but when you look at actions after my involvement, they say they just did it so that you can just keep quiet. That's what I feel.
Okay. Listen, we looked at Steve Hofmeyer's comments. We also looked at Ambassador Mandela's comments as well. We spoke to political commentator Kim Heller, and this is what she has to say about the race issue. She says white people are not ready yet for change. Take a look.
White people are not prepared to make any adjustments in their lives. And perhaps black people should stop putting their faith in white people.
All right, Doctor, what do you think of those comments? Is she right?
I don't think anyone's ready in South Africa, and I think we're not ready at an institutional level. Like I was saying, we're talking about politicians who aren't really political-wise to commit to this, right? We've really lost that post-1994.
But how do they commit to this? Because, you know, you've got races like Momberg and so forth. You know, there are processes now that are in place and legislation that's in place now to say if you're racist, you will be prosecuted in such a manner. What else can they do?
I think we've got to put it high on our agenda. South Africa is broken apart by race, and that's the reality, right? Recently, the government released its National Action Plan Against Racism, Xenophobia and Racial Intolerance. And you read that, and it gives a lot of contextual issues, but it rightly ties it into socio-economic issues, but it's not talking about how can you actually start to solve the problem, which ministry is it going to be based in, what's that strong political commitment. The elections also went. We see land coming up as an issue. We see a lot of things coming up, rightly so, but at the heart of the problem in our country is racism. So political commitment is not there. South Africans are not ready to enter into an honest, open, visionary dialogue, and that needs to happen as well.
Kaya, just on the comments of Mrs. Heller there, talking about that white people are not ready to embrace the change as well. With your generation, one would hope that with every single generation of white kids, they become more tolerant and understand a little bit better. Do you find that's the case with your peers who are white?
I wouldn't say that. The reason being is that you find that blacks or black children or youths are moving into the white communities, but how often do you find the white children moving to the black communities? So we, as the blacks, I would say we are willing to integrate, but there is not cooperation, most especially with the white communities.
You feel that the white communities do not understand how we live and so forth?
Exactly, and I think to break away from the racism, it's just a matter of intertwining everyone. Because what is happening now is that we are just continuing the practices of apartheid, which is white separated. And that's actually what our parents also do to us. They often question why we have white friends. So in them questioning us, they make us also doubt that. And now what that does is that it divides us. But then when we look at this matter of land, I often ask my friends, are white South Africans Africans?
So why do you ask that question?
I ask that because you have them owning South African property, yet you have native South Africans who are not owning South African property. You have Africans who do not own African property. And it goes further to asking ourselves as to why English and Afrikaans are official languages, whereas you have Africans living in South Africa who their population is great, but their languages are not recognized as official languages.
Okay, interesting stuff. Listen, we also asked our political commentator, Kim Heller, what her thoughts were on the land debate.
Land debate in this country, to me, shouldn't necessarily even involve white people. White people were the oppressors. They were the thieves. I sit here as a white person, like every other white person in this country, and I enjoy the benefits daily of land theft.
Shakira, what are your comments? What do you think about that comment from Kim Heller?
You know, like I said, I think race and class are intertwined, and land is obviously linked to that as well. I think it's her comments specifically are exactly what we need to start to admit what the problems are. I also think that, you know, land is a very emotive issue. It's become a very populist issue as well. It's an important issue, but we need to unpack it a little bit more. And listening to what Kaya saying about how you're saying racism in your different spaces is absolutely correct. And then asking questions like, are whites Africans? So this is such a complex, multi-layered issue that we need to start to talk about very honestly and very robustly, which we're not doing. And I think it also has economic consequences, right? And we can't get away from that. And we've got to be very careful in how we do this, because I've traveled the continent quite a lot, and seeing the type of suffering that you see is not something we want to lose our democracy to. So yes, on the one hand, we need the redistribution, but on the other hand, we also have to think about the future of the country.
Okay, food security is what you're talking about. Okay, just to wrap all of this up, what do you do? Just you yourself, Kaya, as an individual, when it comes to the race issue. You know, you're saying you don't think, you wonder sometimes whether white people in South Africa believe they're Africans, but for yourself, how do you approach the race issue? Do you try not to see color when you talk to people?
The unfortunate truth is that no matter how much I try to not see color, I will always see it. But the question is, how do I react to it? Personally, what I do is that I equipped children from my community through various different ways, however I can, to be independent, because the unfortunate truth is that the economy belongs to the whites. But if we were to redistribute the land without degrading our economy, I think it would be a matter of segregation between ownership and usage, such that the whites lease the land instead of owning it. Because another unfortunate truth that we have to face is that we as blacks are not ready to take over the land. But that does not mean that the land shouldn't be overtaken. So what I do is that I empower youngsters to be independent.
Okay, be independent. All right, guys, thank you so much. Interesting chatting with you, talking about race and the issue of land in South Africa. Kaya Ramushai from the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, 18 years old, in studio with us. We also Dr. Shakira Chunaro, who's part of the African Union Youth Advisory Council and an alumni of the Obama Fellowship as well. Thanks, you guys. Okay, this is where we leave it for today. The Mentorship Challenge is coming up next, followed by the Mudise Network. I'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye. Yep, it's a never-ending conversation, isn't it?